Good morning, everybody. This is CaneSport Right Now as we react to the breaking news this morning that quarterback D'Eriq King has given up hope of returning to the field this year and is opting to have surgery on his injured shoulder. And I'm Gary Furman, the publisher of CaneSport.com, joined as always by our managing editor, Matt Shodell. And Matt probably saw this coming. I mean, he's been out for a few weeks now trying to rehab. It probably was the smart strategy to take with this injury, see if it could get better through rehabilitation. But now that it's been a few weeks and they're seeing that it's not going to get better through rehab, best to just pull the plug on D'Eriq King's season, let him go get surgery, and then a decision on whether to apply for a medical hardship and potentially come back as quarterback next year can be made down the road. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, this is not unexpected. It's what we had posted for people who are on the message boards at CaneSport a lot. It's what we posted, after the Michigan State game. And basically, from what we had heard at that time and what we posted was that this was his idea to not have surgery. And let's see, because it's sort of his last gasp at, trying to really make a major impact for the Miami Hurricanes, although it's to be determined, I guess, if he could actually get another year of eligibility, if that'll happen, if it'll be at Miami, who knows. But as far as what his vision was, this was supposed to be his last year at Miami, and he didn't want it to just have a switch turned and that's it, or I guess it would be a switch flipped. We can't edit that out. We're live. Oh well. You don't turn a switch, everybody. You flip a switch. But anyway, yeah. So it's a shame. It's a shame. I feel bad for D'Eriq. Super great guy. I mean, just one of those awesome people. Great leader in the locker room. Great leader on the field. But you know what? I mean, with the team at where it is right now, with a losing record, maybe it is best that Miami fans can see, is Tyler Van Dyke going to be the next great quarterback at Miami? When Jake Garcia is back in November, can he be a guy who's the next great quarterback back at Miami? Because I think a lot of fans already see this as a wasted year. And if that is in fact the case, this might be a blessing in disguise, so to speak. Maybe we can see if Miami has some hope, give fans a glimmer of something to look forward to amid the horrors of the Manny Diaz regime, as some fans are looking at it right now. So we'll see if they can turn it around or not.
All right, there's a lot of different elements of this that we're going to discuss right now. There's several questions. There's obviously fallout from this moving forward here this season and into next season. We'll try to cover some of those things right now. If anybody has any questions as you're watching, feel free to enter them in the chat, and we'll discuss them during the course of this show. All right, so he gets injured, and it was early in the season, and Miami still had hopes in front of it, and it made sense to not rush to judgment. Now that has slowly started to dissipate, Matt, and Miami still is in the coastal race. I mean, I think we have to stress that. The fan base has been understandably up in arms by what it's seen so far this season. The fact that Miami is still in the coastal race does not diminish the lack of competitiveness against Alabama, almost losing the next game to App State, losing to Michigan State, losing to Virginia. And obviously you can make excuses always, but I don't feel that the fan base, by being up in arms, has been unjustified. I mean, this is really the fourth straight year of this product being at the level that it's at. And the decisions that the administration is going to have to make here going forward in these coming weeks is, do they want to pretend like it's not happening, or, do they want to be proactive and do what, some things that they can do to make it better, whether Manny Diaz is the head coach or not. I think it's become apparent that Miami needs to make a major investment in its football program, and what that means is yet to be determined. But there's no reason for them to be sitting by with their hands in their pockets right now, in my opinion. But that's another subject. Let's get back to D'Eriq King. All right, so it's the Tyler Van Dyke show now, and after a little bit of a rough start against Virginia, I thought he played pretty well in the second half, Matt. And this is a chance to develop a quarterback that was identified to come into the program a few years ago and see what you have. And hopefully Jake Garcia gets back from his ankle surgery in the month of November, and we get to see him get back to platooning with Tyler Van Dyke. And you turn negative into a positive, and Miami can come out of this with a firm verdict on where it stands at the quarterback position. So your thoughts on that, and your thoughts on what you saw of Tyler Van Dyke against Virginia?
Well, forget Tyler Van Dyke against Virginia. I mean, let's go back to Central Connecticut State, because this is like the perfect way to break in a quarterback, right? You start him against an awful team that's basically a glorified high school team that we spoke about in depth at that time. Then Virginia's defense is awful. I mean, it was surprising to me that he was as bad as he was, and the offense was as bad as it was in the first half against Virginia. Virginia is one of the worst defenses in the country, and you know what? North Carolina is better, but not much better. So like, it's a steady progression from an awful one of the defenses in the world, so to speak, in Central Connecticut State, to one of the worst defenses in Power 5 in Virginia, to now a worse than mid-range defense in Power 5 in North Carolina. So he's sort of getting taking these slow baby steps to see what a good defense is going to do against him. He had very jittery the first half against Virginia, off-target passes, and just not making good reads. And in the second half, he looked a little more comfortable. So, the key now this Saturday is, did he make that next step? Because if he didn't, this is a guy who probably isn't going to get better. You want to see young guys get better each and every game. If he comes out the first half against a pretty bad North Carolina defense and does the same thing against Virginia in the first half, first game on the road, he looks uncomfortable, he has no presence. That's not going to be a good sign for the future, because there's going to be bigger and more important games down the road. And, you have what you have. My thing with Tyler Van Dyke is, and we've covered him since recruiting, is he's a nice guy, but Jake Garcia is the guy that's got that swagger where Jake Garcia he doesn't care. He wants to play Alabama. He wants to have 4th and 22 with the game on the line, and he's a quarterback trying to win the game. And Tyler Van Dyke, he's just like, it's hard. He's got that personality, very reserved, sort of Connecticut country guy, almost seems like you just don't know if he's got that intense drive to be the best. Whereas with Jake Garcia, I've already seen that, talking to him and watching him and, all that stuff. So to me, that's the biggest question that has to be answered. And we'll get a sense of that when he's on the road this weekend. And if he looks good in the first half or bad in the first half, that's going to tell me a lot about how Tyler Van Dyke prepared for 2 weeks, knowing he's the start of the rest of the year with no competition behind him, and if he has that drive to be the best.
I agree with everything you said. And the thing that I think we have to point out is this: Tyler Van Dyke's not a true freshman. This is a guy that's been in the program now, and you expect him to be ready to show what he can do. Now, should he get progressively better as he goes forward in his career? No question about it. But it's not like he just walked on campus a couple months ago like Jake Garcia did. And, this is a guy that you can have expectations of, I believe. No different than Alabama rolling Bryce Young out there this year and having expectations that he can lead them to a national title. Got derailed a little bit by that last-second loss at Texas A&M on Saturday, but that's football. I mean, very few teams go undefeated during the course of a year. So I think any expectations of Tyler Van Dyke for this Saturday at North Carolina and moving forward are very fair. And this is his audition, so to speak. And, I also think back to watching, as an example, Oregon last year. They had a quarterback by the name of Tyler Show, who they rolled out last year after Justin Herbert had graduated, and he got the season last year to play and show what he can do, and didn't do so great. And it cost them a few ball games. And what happened? They replaced him, and they've got a new quarterback this year, and they've got a new group of young quarterbacks behind that quarterback. And Tyler Show transferred to Texas Tech. He was out of the program, boom, just like that. And that's kind of like how it is for quarterbacks. It's like programs that want to compete and want to play for championships, they don't have time to develop somebody over 3 seasons. So Tyler Van Dyke, to me, is under the gun right now, Matt. This is his opportunity. You could call it an unfortunate circumstance. You could call it a break for him that Jake Garcia is out for a few more weeks and it's his show. But his show comes with pressure and expectations. And this is his chance to prove that he can be a quarterback of the future at the University of Miami. And you have to hope that turns out positive. And he's getting a good opportunity Saturday against a North Carolina team that is absolutely struggling on defense. I mean, they have looked abysmal on defense this year, Matt. You've taken a look at North Carolina a little bit. Talk about that, the opportunity you see for Tyler Van Dyke this Saturday against North Carolina's defense.
Yeah, I mean, look, not that it's a strength, but North Carolina, probably the strongest part of its defense is its secondary, if there is a strong point. So, especially with a young quarterback, I'm sure North Carolina's expecting this, and I think Miami will do it. A lot of run early, try to get the run game established, take some of the pressure off Tyler on the road. A lot of short, quick passes, not to test the cornerbacks and the safeties too much down the field. That's what I expect. What I hope is that they throw the ball down the field. Because, at the end of the day, that's more fun, right? I'm a reporter, but I also like to watch, some of these explosive plays, and Miami's got the guys to do it. And I like the one-on-ones down the field. North Carolina will go one-on-one, with the Mike Harleys and Charleston Rambos of the world. So I'd like to see them attack, but just knowing what Rhett Lashley's done this year and knowing Manny Diaz's philosophy, it's going to be a lot of run, a lot of short, quick passes, quick hitches and stuff like that. It's going to be a little disheartening to see it, but I fully expect it on Saturday on the road with a young quarterback who they're not sure how he's going to do after a rough first half against Virginia. I don't remember if you actually asked me a question before this, but North Carolina's defense overall is not good. I mean, when I say this, the strength of their defense, the secondary, it's an average secondary, but their front line just is not real good, and linebackers without Surratt are below average. So Miami should be able to put up a lot of points like that. If you have a top quarterback, Miami should score over 30 points, and if they don't get the 30-point mark, that would be disappointing in this game.
I would not recommend conservatism this Saturday. I would not be deceived by North Carolina's up and down nature so far this season. It's an offense that's capable of exploding. I mean, they did it against Virginia. They were in a tight game, and then they got it going and were able to put things away. I'm not close enough to Carolina to explain why they're having the season they're having. Obviously they are not the same team they were at the end of last year when they came into Hard Rock and just ran up and down the field on Manny Diaz and Blake Baker's defense. But I don't think they're totally incapable either. And they have a very good quarterback, and Miami has not always been great, obviously, this year on defense. And I don't think that the situation calls for conservatism on offense because you have a young quarterback. I think you got to let it rip. I think you have nothing to lose. You're 2-3. Your chances of running the table here and
hold on. Did you say you have nothing to lose? Like Manny Diaz's job will be lost.
Well, that's my point. That's my point. You come out conservative and you get blown out of the stadium, your situation's going to be way worse. So I think you got to go for it. And I think, you don't baby Tyler Van Dyke. You've had 2 weeks.
Have you been watching the same Miami offense that I've been watching?
100%. But so playing scared.
They should, but what do you expect? I'm saying this is what they're going to do. I have no doubt.
I'm seeing a coaching staff that's backed into a corner. I'm seeing a team that's backed into the corner. I'm seeing players that want to go to the NFL, that it's not going so well this year. I see a lot of guys backed into corners right now. And I think the expectation would be that they come out swinging. They're swinging at each other in practice, swing at North Carolina and let it all rip. You have playmakers on offense, Matt. There's no reason to come out handing the ball to Cam Harris up the middle in this game. I mean, play after play after play, because you're afraid that your quarterback is young and can't do things. He's been in the program a couple of years. He's been coached by a couple different guys. I mean, there's just no reason to me to play scared in Chapel Hill on Saturday. And I think if they do play scared, they're going to lose badly. I think they're going to need to score points in this game. So I'm looking forward to seeing Tyler Van Dyke go out there with an offensive arsenal and see what he can do, because this is the next couple years of the program that are, slowly getting on the line here, in my opinion. So we'll see what happens there. All right. So Tyler Van Dyke gets the start. Jake Garcia is still out for a few weeks, and probably too early for us, Matt, to speculate on what kind of role that Jake will have when he gets back. But you would like to think that he will get the opportunity to platoon again with Tyler, regardless of what happens these next few weeks, because no matter what happens here, Miami must emerge from this season with a firm conviction on the quarterback position, and they have an opportunity to do that now. Now, let's get back to the
Hold on, because I disagree with you. I disagree with you. I mean, if Tyler Van Dyke's rolling, this is not about next year for Manny Diaz. This is about this year. Let's just be clear. Like, if Tyler Van Dyke, if they're winning games and looking good on offense with Tyler Van Dyke, you will not see Jake Garcia in a meaningful snap, because Manny Diaz, this is it. Like, he has to basically run the table maybe with one more loss and get to the ACC Coastal title game, or else. And if you put in Jake Garcia and you're not sure what you have, and if Tyler Van Dyke's been rolling pretty good, no chance you see Jake Garcia, in my opinion.
I'll disagree. I'm not ready to say that Van Dyke, no matter what he does these next few weeks, is the quarterback of the future here over Garcia. So, like, I think you got to see as much of Garcia also this year as you can. Now, if he goes out there and is playing poorly, obviously that's going to cut into his playing time. But he was doing well in fall camp. The two quarterbacks were neck and neck. And, you know, my opinion would be that you must see as much as you can of both of these kids this season. You know, whether Manny Diaz stays and comes back next year, whether a coaching change is made, is totally irrelevant to the fact, to me, that Miami needs to come out of this with a firm conviction on the quarterback. Do you have to go to the portal and get somebody for next year? Does D'Eriq King come back? Does he not come back? We'll talk about that in a second.
We're on the same.
There's so many things, Matt, that they have to reconcile here, and I think it's important to see everything.
Yeah, of course. I mean, we're on the same page. I'm saying this is what's going to happen. Just like what you were saying before, like about the conservative or not conservative play calling. I agree with you. They should throw the ball down the field. I agree with you. They should play Jake Garcia. What I'm saying is they're not going to. If just from what we know already, like, they're not going to change their stripes. We've seen it in the past. Miami struggled. They don't all of a sudden change their offense. I mean, they don't change their philosophy. This is the problem with Miami. They're stuck in the sand. So that's why I'm saying I don't think, even though they should throw the ball down the field, I don't think they will throw the ball down the field. Even though they should play Jake Garcia, they're too scared to play Jake Garcia if Tyler Van Dyke is playing well and if they're winning games. And Rhett Lashley clearly said after they both split reps, he doesn't want to do that. He doesn't want to split reps with the quarterbacks. So, like, I'm saying, yeah, of course they need to know what they have in Jake Garcia. What I'm saying is they're not going to find out because they're playing for this year and not thinking about the future, which is a big problem.
Well, I'll tell you right now, Jason C. agrees with me because he's nominating me to be athletic director. And, you know, right now we're talking about I'd have to be the football coach to deal with this situation. But I'll tell you this, Jason, if I were athletic director, you'd be seeing a lot of things differently right now. And but that's a subject for a different show, a different day. All right. So we've talked about Tyler Van Dyke, the opportunity at North Carolina. Huge opportunity for him to continue. He got his feet wet against Virginia. The game ended poorly, but you know what? The game ending poorly was just a happenstance of everything that happened before it. The kick got hit the upright on the final play. Miami lost that game over the previous 4 quarters, particularly in the first quarter, the way they came out. So they're going to need to come out ready to play, obviously, in Chapel Hill on Saturday. So D'Eriq King now goes under the knife and has surgery for a second straight year. And the way we see it is he only played 3 games this year. This was his 5th year of official eligibility. So he should have the option, Matt, of applying, if he chooses to, for a hardship waiver with the NCAA that would get approved and give him a chance to play next season. Should D'Eriq King come back from rehab one more time and be Miami's starting quarterback essentially next year, or compete with Van Dyke and Garcia to be the starting quarterback for next year?
Okay, well, first let's go back a minute, because D'Eriq King, whenever he's tried to play a full season, he redshirted 1 year at Houston. Whenever he's actually played a full season, he has never made it through a season healthy, and you can clearly see why. I mean, he runs with reckless abandon. In this case, his offensive line, was awful. But he doesn't understand or want to shy away from big hits, which, okay, kudos to him. If you're a fan, you'll love that. But like he can come back for another year. He's not going to make it through next season. He's just not. That's just not how he plays. I don't know that he's going to have any NFL options at all at this point, given the injury, and, basically he's not probably a quarterback in the NFL. So I imagine if he can, which he should be able to, he'll come back, whether it's at Miami or a different program even. I don't know. I think a lot will hinge on how Tyler Van Dyke and Jake Garcia do if Jake Garcia plays, because let's face it, if those guys are looking really good, fans, this might be a battle. This might not just be, oh, D'Eriq King's definitely going to start, because, at some point Miami needs a reset, right? Where it's not just the same team as the last 2 years with D'Eriq King. And if D'Eriq King sees that it's sort of at that point where I have to battle for a starting job, he's already transferred once. It's not out of the question he'll just go to a place where, he thinks there's a pretty good looking offense, a pretty good looking system, where he knows that, guaranteed I'll start. So I think a lot will hinge on how this offense looks under Tyler Van Dyke. If Jake Garcia winds up playing the last few games, if he's starring, because fans want Jake Garcia and Tyler Van Dyke. Like, they were calling for those guys to start even when D'Eriq King was playing fine this year. It wasn't D'Eriq King's fault. The offense was terrible. You think D'Eriq King doesn't know that there's a lot of noise out there that he shouldn't have been starting anyway, which is ridiculous, by the way. But it's just not a great situation. So, it's TBD, not TBD. It's TBD to be determined if he returns. And another big factor is, does Rhett Lashley return as the offensive coordinator? If he doesn't, I don't think King comes back. I think there's no chance. So, there's going to be a lot that's going to happen over the next few months. It's going to be very interesting, what happens before February with these guys, or before
the whole
January.
Program is really at a crossroad right now, and it is going to be very interesting to see the decisions that are made and how they choose to go forward from here. Because every year that you make a bad decision, it costs you two on the backside, and the proof's in the pudding. I certainly believe bad decision was made in when Mark Richt retired. Now here we are. You're paying for it 2 years forward. Just by the way, yet another season. This is the fourth straight season going like this. This is not like, oh geez, the fans are being too tough, or CaneSport's being too tough, or whatever. I mean, we're reacting to what we're seeing. We're reacting to what we feel from the fan base, and we're not being too tough. I mean, this is a fourth straight year of Miami mediocrity. And it needs to be more than the Miami spin machine. It needs to be more than letters and statements and excuses. And, so you're going to keep paying forward as bad decisions are made. And at some point, maybe the success of the decisions being made will start to get better. And, we'll see how that works going forward. All right. So D'Eriq King, I think a big factor in this decision that he'll have to make as he works through rehab and looks to his future is NIL, Matt. I mean, this is the guy that was the poster boy for University of Miami in NIL. He started companies, he had deals all over the place. I'm assuming that those endorsers would stand by him if he does choose to come back another year. Potentially, D'Eriq King could make more money coming back another year just from NIL than he might make out in the real world. I mean, he's not getting drafted by the NFL at this point for sure. I don't think there's anybody that would debate that. So his decision is come back to be the quarterback at Miami. We can debate whether he should compete with Van Dyke and Garcia, and to what degree later in the season after we have a greater sample size. But his decision could be going out in the real world and getting the job, or having this job be being in the Miami football program for another year, where he could collect NIL money and the money he gets as a scholarship football player, and maybe be better off than he'd be in the real world.
I mean, you make a good point. Look, NIL, I think, NIL is not a fad. It's here to stay. But with that said, year one of NIL is going to be different than years 2 and beyond, because a lot of companies wanted their names in the media. It's free advertising, right? Oh, D'Eriq King just got his first deal, his second deal, his third deal. Oh, the biggest deal yet, And that's not going to still be in the news cycle in future years, unless it's, $1 million deal or something, something crazy. And nobody's giving D'Eriq King a ton of money for year 2 with the program the way it is. I mean, unless they just want to basically do some charity. So, I don't know. I think D'Eriq King, whatever NIL money he got this year, I don't think he'll get the same amount of money next year. So your point of him going in the real world, if he does not think he has a pro future, which he might think he has a pro future. These guys don't always see it the way people on the outside do. He might think, oh, I'll go to the Canadian Football League and I'll be a star, and then I'll head over, some NFL team will pick me up and I'll have these huge contracts in the NFL. Like, that's how some of these kids think. I don't see it, but you don't know what these guys think. I mean, D'Eriq King thought he was going to come back from a shoulder injury that everyone told me he had to have surgery for. So like, he'll just rehab it and come back. Like, you don't know. It's not like he's going to believe what everyone's telling him necessarily on the outside. So, he believes in himself as a football player, that he thinks he's going to be a star wherever he goes, and maybe he will be. Who's to say he's wrong? But yeah, I'd say NIL money probably won't be as big a factor. I mean, if he's making $50,000 in NIL money next year, versus if he thinks he doesn't have an NFL future, getting a head start on his future, as an actual real world person. 50-50 to me, if he comes back or goes out in the real world, if he gets a decent job offer.
Tough decisions, man. Tough decisions lie ahead. All right. In our story that's on the website right now, we point out exactly what Van Dyke is walking into, and he's walking into having to be the pilot of an offense that has unquestionably been struggling, Matt, and way down in the national stats on offense. Sean Rounds here, one of our viewers, makes the point of how poor the offensive line play has been, and that goes without saying. D'Eriq King got hurt because he was getting the crap beat out of him when he was playing. So obviously, Miami's offensive success, regardless of who the quarterback is, starts with better offensive line play.
Look, the biggest problem to me this entire season has been that, for whatever reason, Rhett Lashley overestimated his offensive line, and so did I. I thought the offensive line was going to be pretty good. Everyone was back from last year. All the starters were back. Some starters weren't even starters anymore because other guys had stepped up, with Jalen Rivers at guard and Jared Williams getting demoted. With Navon Donaldson back off injury. So, like, there was no reason to think the O-line would be bad. But again, as you and I both know, Gary, we see portions of practice. We don't see the entire practice. We don't see them getting after it. And I think that the fact they don't do one-on-one, full contact, and fall drills ruined the season. Because I think Rhett Lashley, if he had seen that, I think Aaron Justice, if he had seen that, they would have said, oh my God, we need to move the pocket. We need to not, run the ball straight up the middle. We do not have a good offensive line. The biggest mistake that they made, and what could cost Manny Diaz his job, is not doing one-on-one full contact and fall drills, not understanding their offensive line sucks, and getting their starting quarterback killed, and not being able to run the ball. And it all comes back to this stupid philosophy that I still don't understand, of not doing contact in fall or spring drills, major contact all the time, not doing ones versus ones. I mean, Manny Diaz is a guy who talks about getting, back to the old days and how it was at Miami when he was a kid watching games. In the old days when we watched practice, and we'd watch the whole practice in the old days, mind you, they were killing each other out there every freaking day. And they didn't care if someone got hurt because the next guy would step up and be just as good, if not better. And like, that's disappeared. And it killed this season. I think it's killed past seasons. Like, people want to say, oh, Larry Coker killed the program, or, oh, the recruiting analysis, they were recruiting off lists for a while there. I'd go into the office. I won't tell you which coach, but I'd go into an office of an assistant coach for an interview, and he'd have up a screen of the rivals, 5 stars and 4 stars. And I said to this guy, I'm like, hey, that's our site. He said, yeah, we're trying to see who to offer. Like, are you kidding me? This is you could say that's the downfall of the program, but just as equally to me, the downfall of this program is this, you call it, you came up with the term country club atmosphere of practice. I don't belong to a country club. I guess you do. But like, I don't know what a country club atmosphere is, but like, I call it a library. Like,
not just practice, the whole program to me is a country club. It's like, what is acceptable at Miami, just because it's supposed to be acceptable, is not acceptable at a lot of places. And that's part of what probably needs to change if this program's ever going to come out from this mess that it's under, where it's, you just sit here year after year after year. Well, okay, yeah, this happened this year, but hey, D'Eriq King is going to probably come back as quarterback in 2022, and we're going to be better next year. And we got blindsided by injuries this year, and just had some bad luck. But 2022 is going to be the year where we could show up at Texas A&M and compete. You could just keep spinning and everything forever like this. This has been going on 18 years now. I'm gonna tell you another point. I feel you on amping things up in practice and the ones versus ones and all that stuff. What about this, Matt? What about you don't get a true picture of what you really are in practice because your roster is just not good enough right now? Like, we could talk about the offensive line in fall camp. Instead of going against the second team defensive line, going against the first team defensive line every day in practice. Yeah, that would be better. But it's not like teams aren't making the first team defensive line look average a lot of times also. Like, you're not necessarily getting a true picture, even if you do that, in my opinion. I'm not saying they shouldn't do it, but what I'm saying is that that's the conundrum that the program is in that they're coming out of fall training camp every year without a true feeling of what they really are. And, then you get into the season and you're dealing with injuries and you're shuffling guys. I mean, how are you shuffling your offensive line the way they were on opening day? How do you not come out of training camp with a conviction on who your right guard is, who your right tackle is? And you're panicking in the Alabama game and changing everything. And now you have all that upheaval. I mean, that is not the formula for success. So there's so many things that obviously need to be looked at and need to change. And, part of the decision, and we won't go too deep into it today, but LBM Stay 1011, one of our viewers, brings up a legitimate question here that we could touch on. Is this a mulligan for Manny Diaz to save his job? Now, they're 2-3 right now. You got 7 games left plus a bowl game. You have 8 games left. I don't think anybody sitting out here is thinking that they're going to peel off 8 straight wins right now. Okay, so you're looking at finishing a 12-game schedule. If things go well, 7-5 might be reality. If things go well, I mean, would 6-6 stun anybody at this point? So, legitimate question here by LBM. Does De'Ara King's injury, Don Chaney's injury, Jalen Rivers' injury, all the excuses that you can make if you want to, does Manny Diaz get a mulligan and come back next year?
Well, I like that he used the word mulligan. I'm guessing he's one of your country club friends. But aside from that, I don't think. Look, the way coaching changes happen are not from the inside, in my experience. They're from the outside. When the boosters stop giving money, when the fans are so upset that they won't buy tickets anymore, essentially when the money dries up, that's when these programs have no choice but to make a change. I think if fans weren't adamant about Manny Diaz has to get fired, if boosters weren't saying we're going to stop giving you money, I think that Blake James's preference is to have Manny Diaz get another year. I think he could point to all these mulligans and say, hey, De'Ara King got hurt. Hey, this happened, that happened. Look, any team can make a million excuses. I mean, every team out there will have issues with whether it's injuries or, personality conflicts or whatever it is. I mean, you could point to a million different things as reasons why you lost games. But at the end of the day, you lost games, and that's not why you're here. And getting back to like what we were talking about with ones versus ones. Yeah, like you're right. If the defensive line isn't good and they're going against the first team offensive line and the first team defensive line isn't good, you're not going to know a lot. But full contact, you don't think you would have seen missed tackles if they had gone more 11 on 11 and realized you had a problem? You don't think Manny Diaz might have actually realized what everyone else knew, that the linebackers aren't good? Like, people have been saying this for 2 years now. Like, these linebackers are not good. Manny Diaz clearly said, oh, these linebackers are really, really good. He not just said it like in quotes, but like he didn't even bother going to the transfer portal to try and get an actual good linebacker. I mean, the fact that, he thinks Wayman Steed, just because he knows what he's doing and can answer all the questions in a test room for where he's supposed to be, makes him a great linebacker. Like, that's not a great linebacker. Like, these coaches, they don't always just go based on what your 40 time is and how high you can jump. they really go on, do you know what to do? Do you have a good attitude? Are you going to keep fighting every rep? That sort of thing. And Wayman Seed knows exactly where to be and what to do, and he gets there a step late. So does that do you any favors? I mean, I can't wrap my head around how year after year, I mean, I'm not a coach. So like they should know more than I do, but it just seems to me like year after year, you and I, Gary, and the fans seem to be right about so many more things than the coaches do, which makes no sense. Like I just don't understand how, coaches who see it every day and have a chance to really, get inside these players and know every single thing about how they react and what they can do, just they don't seem to do it. Like, Manny Diaz taking over the defense was supposed to fix things. I said that's not going to change the defense, and guess what? It didn't. It's the same system. It's the same players. It's just some different guy who's calling the same plays that basically he and Blake Baker were calling anyway. It was just like this, like little Band-Aid to make fans think, oh, we put a Band-Aid on, it's going to be okay now. Like, no, like
it's a spin machine, and that's the decision that the administration has to make. Do you want to continue to be a spin machine, or and I'm not talking about just make little change. I'm talking about if they're going to make changes, they got to make changes in everything, starting with the commitment of the university to the program. And that's why this is a really good question by LBM Stay, because their instinct based on what they always do is going to be mulligan, no doubt about it. But every year that they're wrong is two forward that the fan base is having to suffer through what it's been having to suffer through, and that's the bottom line. I mean, it just is what it is. All right. Brian Haley asks us the question, Matt, have we seen enough of Jake Garcia in practice to justify him being ahead of TVD? My answer to that would be no. I think the TVD and Garcia were, to me, equal. I mean, one day one might look a little better than the other, but to me, they both were equal. I think TVD got the nod to go first when they platooned because he was the older guy, had been in the program a little bit longer. I didn't think there was a noticeable difference in their performance when they were both out there. And I think that it's important that this stay in equal competition going through the next almost year, because you don't want to pick one over the other right now, in my opinion, Matt.
I mean, listen, Brian Haley, wherever you are, I haven't had breakfast yet. Okay, it's been a very busy morning with with the news of the day, so maybe I'm a little lightheaded. But like I've always, since spring, when I saw both these guys, thought Jake Garcia is the better of the two. And like to me in the spring, Jake Garcia was clearly better. And then when they added the plays in the fall, Jake fell behind, and he looked like a little bit lost. There was instances where, again, we don't watch that much of practice, but there's instances where literally just in one-on-one quarterbacks throwing to receivers, he would like throw the wrong route. Like he didn't even know where the receiver was going. And this isn't in coverage. This is just like a standard warm-up for the quarterbacks where the receiver goes out on a certain route and you throw the ball to where the receiver is going to be and he catches it. And like he wasn't even doing that correctly. But so with that said, I think once, and Jake Garcia has been, I think he was in 3 different high school systems last year. Everyone says he's a smart kid, picks up things quick. College is a different level. I think when Jake Garcia fully understands what to do, he is the better of the two quarterbacks. Now, I don't disagree with Gary. You got to see both. But, to your point, I think at the end of the day, Jake Garcia is going to be the guy. And that's just me guessing right now. And you could play this back in 2 years and be like, Shodell's a genius. Like, that's what people generally say about me. So we can wait 2 years and then you can give me my applause.
Yeah, I mean, I like everything I see of Jake Garcia. I like the intangibles. I just like the kid and his leadership and his swagger, and like to me, it's like they coined the phrase Broadway Joe decades ago. I'll call this kid Broadway Jake. I mean, he's a walking like swag machine, and if he can perform on the field as well as he performs off the field, and the personality he has and everything, oh my God, like this is a kid that really could become a college football superstar if he has the goods on the field. So, when he's healthy in November, to me, he has to get an opportunity to play. I hope they go back to a platoon system regardless of what the record is. at that point. And so I think, you and I are in agreement, obviously, that Jake Garcia definitely has a bright future ahead of him in some way, shape, or form. To be determined, without question. So Kingwood Locks here saying, got to move on. Next quarterback up. King's got to heal and go to the league. But Kingwood, I would say he can't go to the league. Like that's not an option. So he's gonna get the surgery. He's going to rehab. I personally think he's going to choose to come back. I mean, I could end up being wrong, obviously. I just think that with the NIL situation and all the things he has going, that he obviously is going to want to continue after he leaves school. It buys him another year to build his brand and build his business. And I think he is going to come back and compete against those other guys. All right. Before we end here, if anybody has any questions, post them in the chat right now. I'm just going through them here. Maurice says he wouldn't be surprised if both King and Van Dyke transfer. I don't see that necessarily. I don't see why either one of them would transfer right now.
Hold on.
Your thoughts?
Okay. Yeah. All I'm going to say is, I think what Maurice didn't post in there is if Lashley leaves, I wouldn't be surprised if. Because, yeah, if Lashley leaves and another guy comes in and brings in a transfer quarterback, I don't disagree. If I'm one of those two guys and Lashley's gone for whatever reason and they bring in a new coordinator and they take someone out of the transfer portal, if I'm Van Dyke or Garcia, heading into July, I would consider transferring. There's no doubt in that situation. Now, current situation, no chance they leave. One of those guys will be the guy.
All right, Kim Everett here. He's woken up with his darts in his hand. He's got a picture of me on his wall, and he's throwing darts at me here, saying I'm making excuses. I'm not sure what excuses he thinks I'm making. I mean, I've been as tough as you'll see anybody be on what's going on at the University of Miami right now, from the athletic director on down. I mean, it's like. And I'm just being honest. I mean, I like everybody. I mean, it's not personal at all. But our job here is to be honest, and I think we are. I think you hear us being honest, and I don't think anybody's making any excuses about anything. I mean, I think we're being blatantly honest.
Listen,
about
Kim Everett is obviously from a rival network. Doesn't want us to get any sort of glory off of our honesty.
I haven't heard him Smith is telling it like it is.
What excuses have you made? I don't understand. I didn't hear any excuses. You did bring up at one point during this conversation, though, that will they use this? Maybe it's just you posing the question as the excuse. Will they use this to try and justify Manny Diaz getting another year? So maybe that's what he's referring to, is that you even brought that up. Like, God forbid you even mention the words Manny Diaz getting another year. Maybe that's what he means, is my guess.
I mean, we're having constructive conversation here about all the pertinent issues, and you have to look at both sides and what might really happen, as opposed to what we think would happen, or the fans think might happen. There's a reality side of it to that as well. And Glenn Salch, he's saying his reality is, why can't the Canes win 8 straight games? We're Miami, right?
They can. They can. I think Glenn hasn't had his breakfast either, just like me. So I think he's a little lightheaded.
Well, Kim Everett says, now you're being realistic.
Thank you, Kim Everett. You're my hero, bro.
All right. One of the names that you mentioned, which is pertinent to this conversation, Matt, is Rhett Lashley. And man, a lot of people have been calling me about Rhett Lashley, and I can't put my fingers around what's happened to Rhett Lashley this year. I mean, he comes in last year with so much hoopla and excitement about the offense that he was bringing with him, and they had some good moments last year. I mean, the offense bailed out the NC State game. I mean, Miami went 8-3 last year. Probably talent-wise was a 5 or 6 win team. And Rhett Lashley and De'Ara King bailed out, I would say, 2 to 3 games last year with the offense and with De'Ara King's execution of it. I think back to the NC State game up there in Raleigh last year. Just an unbelievable offensive performance. But This year, Rhett Lashley has been a different animal, and I have not been impressed at all with just about anything he's doing. He's not uh, rolling out wrinkles the same way that he did last year. He's not, those plus plays that bailed Miami out of so many situations in 2020 aren't showing up in 2021. Matt, he's struggling this year. Would you agree?
I mean, you mentioned last year. Last year, I don't want to say it was a mirage, but if there's no Lou Headley and no, Jose Borregales on this team last year, it is a 5 or 6 win team, regardless of what Lashley did with the offense. And then people wouldn't have been talking about how great the offense was as much as how bad Miami was. So in that sense, it's a bit of a mirage. The other thing is, it was an adjustment. Every ACC team pretty much got to see Rhett Lashley's offense last year. And yeah, sure, they study him at, at his previous stops and, SMU, and they could watch, that sort of thing. But, it's different with different personnel. And when you have the exact same personnel and the exact same offensive coordinator coming back, there's a tipping point where either that coordinator is going to keep doing great and even better because he's got the same personnel better in year 2, they can do even more, or he's keeping it exactly the same, and now other teams know exactly what to expect, and he's going to do worse. And unfortunately for Rhett Lashley, he was not innovative. He didn't add to the playbook. If anything, he actually took away from the playbook. And it's created a huge problem because other defenses, all they have to do is watch last year's film now with the same personnel. He's using the exact same way. There's nothing different. And it's not that hard to stop a team that's not talented enough to beat one-on-one coverage and do this and do that, where you're just blowing guys off the ball at the line of scrimmage and making things easy. Where a great offense coordinator is a great offense coordinator is when your offense line isn't good. When you're not winning one-on-one battles, you're innovative, you're using misdirection, you're getting the matchup you want, and you're getting that guy the ball. And look, I mean, I love Rhett Lashley to death, but he's not being innovative this year. He's just not. It's the same thing we saw last year. There's nothing different. And it's costing them. And that's why, even with the exact same personnel, other than Brevin Jordan, but adding Charleston Rambo, they've taken a huge step backwards.
Demetrius Ruff thinks that De'Aaron King should come back as a wide receiver to get a look from the NFL. I would say that I think that ship sailed. If he was going to do that, he would have done it already in his career. Now he's had ACL surgery. He's going to have had shoulder surgery. I don't see that in the future. Ultimately, Matt, what this is all about is what the end result's going to be of the season. And RC in the 305 is saying that he thinks it's safe to say that Miami's not going to be bowl eligible this year, regardless of who's playing quarterback. So you got the Van Dyke show now for the next few weeks. You got at North Carolina, you got NC State at home, and at Pittsburgh. Okay, that's the toughest stretch of the season with a young quarterback. Can Miami win 2 of the 3, Matt? Can they win even 1 of the 3? I mean, they're going to be underdogs, I think, in all 3 games.
I mean, look, whenever they're favorites, they lose. So maybe when they're underdogs, they'll win. I mean, to me, I hate to do this because I hate it when players and coaches say it's 1 game at a time. But we don't like this. This is a schizophrenic team. They could quit or they could fight. And if they quit, they're definitely not a bowl eligible team. They're not even going to be close to bowl eligible. If they fight and if they, really do band together, I think they can, they can finish with 7 or, 7 wins, 8 wins, even maybe. It's not out of the realm of possibilities. These are not great teams really on the schedule that they're playing. These are just, good teams, maybe. Some of them average, some really bad, Duke or even FSU, but FSU can put up a battle, as North Carolina found out. So, I hate to not have an answer, but I've always been honest. I'm going to be honest. I have no idea. It can go one of 2 ways. It can go either awful or good. What I don't see, the only thing I can say I don't see is it just being straight down the middle where they play pretty well every game. It's either going to be awful or pretty good. I just don't see it being in the middle.
Well, they're 7 to 10 point underdogs at North Carolina, depending on the sports book, and we'll see how that line moves during the course of the week. I think there will be some fluctuation in that, but North Carolina is a team that's struggling like Miami. These are going to be 2 struggling teams on the field on Saturday. NC State, to me, is better than both. clearly. I think NC State right now, from a talent standpoint, might be the best team in the ACC this year. They beat Clemson and really beat them a couple times if you look at the missed field goals that they had to overcome and all that. And to me, that was a statement game for NC State. I felt going into the year, and I said this on our site and in our programs and stuff, that, to me, NC State was one of the sleeper teams this year, and that's proven to be the case. The good thing is that game's at Hard Rock Stadium. If that game was in Raleigh this year, I wouldn't like Miami's chances at all. With the game at Hard Rock, you're gonna go in hoping that you can compete, but they're probably going to be a slight home underdog. We'll see how that shakes out. The game at Pittsburgh, Pittsburgh to me is playing very good offensive football right now. Mark Whipple is having a great year as an offensive coordinator, maybe one of his best from what I've seen. He's got a veteran quarterback in Kenny Pickett. That game on the road is going to be a really, really, really tough out. Looking forward beyond that. Georgia Tech's a little up and down, but they've been a program on the improve with a coaching staff that can draw it up pretty good. We'll that won't be a layup at home, probably. Virginia Tech at home. Virginia Tech has been playing some pretty good football, at least at home. I don't know how that's going to carry over to Hard Rock. Duke has been showing some minor signs of life in recent weeks, but I don't expect Duke to be good enough to win. So the bottom line in all this, Matt, is that, and I use this phrase a lot, but it's really true. Every game is going to stand on its own 2 feet. And, you talk about 5 wins in 7 games to get to 7-5. I don't think that's out of the question by any stretch of the imagination.
Yeah, I mean that's what I was saying.
And I didn't mention FSU, which just went to North Carolina and won.
Yeah, I mean what I said is I just said it. Like, these are some good teams. I don't think there are any great teams on the schedule. Miami can go one of 2 ways. Either they can be really good or they can be really bad. I don't see it being in the middle. I still think that's true. So if they're really good, I think they get to 7, maybe 8 wins. I was sort of including a bowl game in that, but and then if they're not good, they may win only maybe 2 more games. So I think this game against North Carolina we'll learn a lot, because we'll learn if they quit or not. If they don't quit and they play pretty good against North Carolina, I think that's a good sign for the rest of the season that they're going to be on the right side of what I said. If they don't play well and it looks like they're not really mentally there, they'll be in that 4-win category.
All right, so I think we've covered it all, Matt. I mean, I think that we've touched on every issue.
I can go to the country club and get breakfast now.
100%. 100%.
All right.
It's going to be interesting. I see this week as for those that root for Manny Diaz and want to see him survive all this. I think this week's a must win. I think if you fall to 2-4 with half a season ahead of you, and the mood that's going to be in the room with NC State coming to town next week, it's not going to obviously be really good. So I see this as a must win. You've had 2 weeks to prepare. The quarterback situation is not an excuse. TVD has gotten all the reps in practice. You should know now what he can do and what he can't do, and you got to show up ready to play on Saturday at 3:30 in Chapel Hill. So that's going to do it for CaneSport Right Now. We'll be back at you, I guess, tomorrow morning. Good morning, CaneSport. We'll talk more about what we hear from the coaches later today. That'll be coming up on the website and go from there. Wednesday night, I'll remind everybody, we have the Lamar Thomas Show. Encourage everybody to watch and listen to that. That's always good. And we got a really interesting, I'm not going to spill the beans yet, Matt, but we have a very interesting guest lineup coming together for that on Wednesday night that I know I'm looking forward to. And I encourage everybody to make some time on Wednesday night to watch that. So for now, he's Matt Shodell. I'm Gary Furman. Thank you for joining us on CaneSport Right Now as we react to the news that D'Eriq King is now officially out for the season, getting ready to have surgery on his injured shoulder. We'll see you next time, everybody.